Right, everybody, we've got our players for round two. And just like with round one, where we were in awe of the quality of the matchup from the get-go in this event, it says a lot that in round two, we've got a matchup of former world Scrabble champions. Normally, it takes a while to get to the good stuff like this. But, Sam, we're coming at you right away with top shelf matchups like this.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. It's a really high quality field of players in Division One. I think there's two divisions, right? So in the Collins field, so there's which is as it usually is, but sometimes they're kind of smushed together like the SPC last week. But yeah, this will be a lot of fun. So what can you tell? You've got a lot of experience with Wellington, especially recently. What can you tell us about your experience with, was it, I think it was the I keep getting confused.
Yes.
The different, we've had some of these different matchups between Inuk and Doko, and then
True.
Which one was the Ultimate Scrabble Showdown? Which one was the Clash of Champions?
So they actually, they had the same name, which is we're going to resolve that issue going forward, so that the Let's Play Scrabble brand and Olatunde Oduwole's brand of Ultimate Scrabble Showdown, they're going to be distinct going forward. But in any case, you're referring to the match that I played with Wellington, which, of course, anybody that watched that knows that I drew much better than Wellington, and that's the reason that I came out on top. He had the last laugh in the main event, where he had a much better performance there, much more challenging to win a long, grueling event like that. So no surprise that Wellington came out on top there, as he has so often in his recent play. So he's just a tremendous player. He has an incredibly flexible, creative style. Very, very difficult to outplay Wellington. You just got to hope you draw well when you're playing him. And Joel, going first. Joel, at the age of, I think somebody said 78 years old. I think he's older, actually. I think he's in his 80s now.
I'm not sure he's 80, but he's close to an interesting decision.
Oh, is he?
So
okay.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, so of course, he's happy to see that blank tile, which this time is not a beer mug, or maybe one's a beer mug and the other one's a trophy. But
right.
In any case, he's decided to exchange. He could have played through. He could have kind of muddled through with Vum, perhaps. So, a nice defensive opening, keeping his X for next turn. So that, that was kind of my instinct, was I wanted to play Vum. Joel got a great rack. He's got lots of available bingos, probably 100, not Trinode, but he's definitely going to play from last game. For those of you who are with us for game one, you know that that's not a valid word in the lexicon, but Joel's going to be able to bingo after Wellington's first play, which is newsy. Interesting that Wellington has decided to spend his S, that valuable tile, to score 30 points. Yeah, what do you think of this play? Well, I mean, his options weren't great, but he could have played Noob, NEWB, keeping that S, setting up a hook for himself for next turn. Of course, Newbie is not good, to answer a question in the chat. Well, you can't spell newbie, with a B instead of the S. Like NEWBY is not a valid spelling. Wellington certainly would have played it if it was. But this is an interesting choice that he's making here. I'm not sure what to think of it.
Yeah, it's tough because he seemed to see all of his reasonable options within a very short time. Between Noob, he initially had WYN, win, set up on his rack. That would have kept the very useful S on the rack, but it would have kept the combination of BC together, which when you're keeping those bingo leaves, you want to try to avoid those sort of clunky combinations of higher point tiles together. So if you're going to keep BC on your rack, which Wellington did, maybe it's better to bank an extra 12 points, as he did with that play. That being said, I feel like even Wellington himself, he might just play win some of the time. I feel like it's a very stylistic choice between some of those shorter moves. Win, Noob, Newsy. None of them feel like they're so obviously best that, they're just a slam dunk. I probably would play Win there, just hoping to, not give Joel very much to work with on the resulting board. But yeah, that was a close one. I don't feel incredibly strongly about it, Sam.
Yeah, he could all, me neither. I mean, if we ran this through a computer engine, the plays would probably be within a couple of points of each other on simulation. By the way, of course, Joel has a plethora of bingos. As we said, I see the chat pointing out port side. That's a nice option for him, making his blank a P, using both of those double word scores, going vertically through the S and Newsy, getting 4 times his play. And also the nice thing about that is, first of all, it's an adjective, so it doesn't take an S or any other hook. I'm seeing questions about possible hooks of port side, and it doesn't leave any vowels next to the triple letter scores. So, that's the sort of a dangerous possibility that he's avoiding or would be avoiding. If it were me, I'd also be looking for overlapping plays. Those actually usually score pretty well. So maybe there's a way to, it's a little tough because you've got those 3, you've got that W, those consonants kind of. So that W, that S, and then that Y, you'd either have to string 3 vowels in a row, or maybe, well, you could do ST. You can make a word with ST, I guess. So I would look for something there. I'm not saying anything immediately, but you kind of have to iterate through. Looks like he's doing riposted. That's going to be his riposte to Newsy. The anagram of port side, maybe you could argue a little bit inferior because, he's stringing that E next to that triple letter. Let's say Wellington has the Z. That'd be a huge play using Z and going down or making whiz or waz or something. That would be a huge score. But these bingos are all pretty equivalent, roughly. So, the biggest thing is don't burn too much time
exactly
deciding between your bingos that all score 78 or whatever it scores. I think that 82 actually, or 82.
Yeah, they're all.
I think
they're all 82. Exactly.
So yeah, don't spend too much time. These are positional differences. They matter, but I've heard it said that there's some sort of point value to the time on the clock too. The lower you go, the more you're going to be making mistakes. So as we talked about, the chat's talking about trinode. Yeah, I already said trinode. Yeah, no, that's not a word.
You're gonna get roasted on that.
I deserve it. I deserve
repeatedly.
it. I told Will. So I think I've seen that as a phony played. And anyway, no more talk about trinode. Someone played it as a phony, and it's implanted itself in my mind. It's not a valid word. So thanks, Seth, in the chat. All right. Wellington's rack. Wellington has got begun. So he is going to use that triple letter, it looks like, or he's considering using that triple letter that Joel's made available for him to make begun vertically and B and ed. So he's keeping CT, not a bad leave. And of course, begun is a past tense. So he's not risking that triple word score on usage on that bottom row because you can't hook on to begun. So this seems like a reasonable play. I mean, there might be other options that I'm not seeing, but I don't know if were there other options there, or seems like another solid play.
Yeah, I mean, begun makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that, riposted or reposted, however, I'm not sure the exact pronunciation of that. Either way, that was one of the options that scored 82, but it did create a very big scoring spot right here. If Wellington had the Z, for example, he would be scoring in the 60 to 70 point range. I think from Wellington's POV, now that Joel made that move, he has to honor the fact that maybe Joel drew the Z, and it's going to put this game more out of reach if he doesn't play there as well. And it's just the highest number of points that Wellington could score there. So makes a lot of sense. Pointing out in the chat that begunk could
I missed that. I missed it.
Could loom large. That's something where I could imagine that hook being missed. I'm going to guess that Wellington isn't missing it because he's the one playing that word, but the K all of a sudden has become a pretty big tile in this game, allowing access to the triple word score. And Joel playing hype down low for 31. He could have played the same letters right here for 36, but perhaps not wanting to open a triple quite as volatile as this one, where certainly if Wellington has an R or a D or even his S, he can make a nice play here to the triple. But interesting choice by Joel. I'm going to assume that the engine will want him to take those extra points and play up here, Sam.
I agree. I think we were talking about this in the first game, a similar scenario where, maybe you say, oh, I don't want to string that H in the triple, but while your play gives those hyped and hyper possibilities too. So it's unclear that this really has much defensive. To me, I don't really see a ton of defensive merit. I mean, maybe, you're not keeping a D, you're not keeping an R, you're not keeping an S. And so maybe, you're opening up a lot for Wellington as well. So, maybe a little bit of defensive merit, but is it 5 points worth? And we can see Wellington's going to use this spot immediately. Partly, again, it's a big spot and he's going to want to take it out from Joel's possibilities. Joel doesn't have an R or a D, but there's a lot of R's and D's and S's in the game. And so Wellington wants to use what's now the sort of the biggest spot. So Joel, I think he's kind of given a couple minor opportunities. These are small things, but I think the reason that it's worth talking about these minor quibbles is because they come up. Like, if Joel had played port side, Wellington, he would have had to play something else, probably something inferior to what he ended up using. So anyway, they're minor issues. It's not like he missed a bingo and he's giving up 50 scoreboard points, but anyway, Wellington's played this archaic word of I'm not even going to try to pronounce it.
Sick, I guess. Sitch,
maybe. I mean, who knows?
An archaic word meaning such. But I think it's worth noting, though, that another option in that same spot, if Wellington wanted to hook hype right now, he could have played swig in that spot for only 3 fewer points, which would have kept CHT on his rack instead of WTG, which I think the CH combination in general, we really like that combination as Scrabble players. It's a rare combination of 2 high point tiles that actually mesh very, very well together and result in a lot of good scoring opportunities together. So I think unless Wellington had a reason to keep the W or G that we're not appreciating, I think I slightly favor swig in that spot, but I do like the idea of playing down there just to grab a bunch of points. Wellington is such a patient player. That's a hallmark of his play. He's not going to worry about taking these intermediate scores like he did with Newsy, like he did with Sitch there. He's going to continue to take his intermediate scores and patiently just hang around in the game and wait to sort of spring some kind of maneuver in the late game.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I hadn't noticed that swig. I think that's a slight improvement. Just the leave value is worth the 3 points. Those G's, people like if anyone watches the videos of our new NWL champion, Mac Meller, he's always will talk about, oh, I don't like the G. I got to get rid of that G. So it can be worth some, it can be worth it to keep that great CH combination. I mean, look at the word he played. It went in that word. It goes in lots of words. So yeah, another minor consideration. I think Wellington's been keeping some sort of clunky. He kept the BC on the beginning and now this WG. So it's interesting how he'll sort of maneuver his rack. He has picked up the X, but meanwhile, Joel did not really
tough. Yeah. Tough situation for Joel here with all those vowels. The problem is that a lot of his plays that use up a lot of vowels, like something like Burgie through this R would clean up his rack nicely, but maybe after seeing Wellington play this S, maybe you feel a little bit more concerned that Wellington has another S in reserve, and you wouldn't want to make an easy way to plop an S down. Something like Grebo here is another option. That opens a triple, and you can see Joel is going to play it safe here with just EE, Sam, alongside the letters of hypes, I should say. Pretty safe option, but it does leave him open to a series of subpar draws with all those clunky letters on his rack.
Yeah, I'm looking as he draws the E and the U. His rack has gotten even worse. Well, I mean, he had 3 E's, but now he has 2 U's, which is really tough. U's do not make that many words. And so, yeah, I don't know. My first instinct, this could be wrong, but, it doesn't look like a bad play to me. It's kind of playing it safe there. You have the lead, but I don't know. I mean, he did leave a really bad leave, so I'm not really sure what to make of that play. Wellington's going to hit back pretty quickly with wax. Wellington we've seen a bunch. I don't know if you felt this in your match with him, but one sort of trend that I noticed is some of the players from Nigeria at the Albany tournament often played much faster than the American players. And we see here on the clock, well, I guess Joel's, I don't know if he's American or Canadian or what, but because I know he lived in Canada for a long time, but the clock differential is already pretty stark. Joel's already used, about 11 of his 25 minutes, and there's only, we're only like a third of the game done. So, now Joel, at least he's got, Bouge or Bogue, I guess, that he could play. I'm not sure where he's planning on playing this, just with
probably me. Here. He's probably going to play him here.
Somewhere better than that. I guess maybe not.
Not really, which is an indictment of how difficult this board and position is for Joel. Wellington sitting with Ragtail on his rack. I don't think it fits anywhere, nor do I think it would fit after Bouge, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, Wellington's clawed his way out from this deficit. And if I had to say which player was favored from here, despite the fact that Joel bingoed for 82 points with his first, move that hit the board of this game, not his exchange, Wellington's fought his way back to being in pretty good shape here. And a lot is going to hinge on this draw for Joel. If he draws a bunch of vowels, he's going to continue to be struggling, whereas Wellington could finally be knocking on the door of potentially playing a bingo here, or he actually has really cool overlapping plays right here, Sam, which are going to score a boatload in that spot. Yeah, Tragic, Agaric, and Garlic, all three
even better
of those in that spot. So Wellington is, I feel like, in my experience of him, is so good at spotting all those tricky, high degree of difficulty plays. I do expect him to potentially see this, but you can see Joel has drawn the second blank, which is a huge pick for him here.
Definitely. He is probably going to bingo. Almost certainly he's got unfair at the very least through that R and riposted, probably other things as well. Wellington's lined up Tragical on his rack that extends 2 tiles off the board there at the bottom. So yeah, he'll probably certainly he'll play in that spot ending in C that you've mentioned. It's the best spot, and he's almost certainly already seen it since he has this Tragical lined up. But yeah, huge swing in the game with the blanks, right? When you draw both blanks, I think the statistic among sort of players of about equivalent strength is about 75% of the games are won by the player with 2 blanks. So it's a big, there's that luck component, and that's a big deal. And not only will he have, this is a little tragic, you have to say, because he by playing Tragic instead of Garlic, a pretty clearly better option. I didn't notice it at first, and until you said, I didn't notice it until you said it. But Garlic also makes it more difficult to use that triple word score, because the G only takes Gi and go, G-I-N-G-O, whereas T takes a bunch of letters, including T-E, a spelling of the musical note, I believe. And before I can even get the words out, Joel is going to lay down failure. Ironically,
his highest score.
His best play, probably ironically his least failed play of the game. He's going to score a lot with that, getting that F. He's getting 24 points for the F alone by doubling it and then tripling the entire word. We do have confirmation that the blank is, of course, an L. And so he's going to take a pretty massive lead, and I don't see a V on the board for Polarjev, which of course I'm sure Wellington is thinking of that beautiful plural of a currency, that one of the very rare words ending in a V. I think there's only maybe 3 or a few more 8-letter words that end in V, but I don't think Wellington's going to bingo. And yeah, he has worked his rack a little better he's maneuvered it well, but Joel's gotten those blanks, and those blanks make it so easy to use all your letters. And he's drawn Matilda as well.
Matilda.
It's going to play too, probably.
Right here. Sorry for my total failure to draw a straight line.
Well, they're bored. They've got the board angled, so it's difficult for you.
But yeah, that's a huge draw for Joel. Normally in Wellington's shoes, he would be pretty happy. He's got a J play potentially if he wants to play Hole in that spot, or Joel if you want to use the dumb Scrabble player pronunciation. He would be happy, and if you can see, he's got it spelled out there. But Joel, even though this is going to be challenging for me to refer to the play that I think Wellington should make versus the player that is right here, Joel and Joel. But after Wellington's play with 42 points with the J, he's going to be right back on the scoreboard thinking, I'm in good shape with a nice TAR leave. But Joel is very, very likely to spot this bingo and continue on pushing his advantage even further. So Wellington, through really very little fault of his own, I guess you did note that maybe he could have played Garlic here instead of Tragic, which would have saved him a little. But even then, with these tiles, he's still getting hit with something like Refugia ending in IA if Joel sees it. So there's no avoiding getting hit on the triple, no matter what Wellington did there. And now, Sam, it's just a question of Joel seeing Matilda. In fact, there is an even crazier place for him to play it with all these overlaps. Will he spot that?
Well, he's had some time to – wow, I didn't notice that. And he's had some time to look at this. So I would think he has. You of course, you want to – when you've got a word like this, you want to look –
wow.
Wherever you can look, you want to look at all these spots that it could possibly fit on the board. And of course, there's not that many. So it's a great play. I'm not surprised that he's making it. He has a great word knowledge, word finding, play finding ability, as you would expect from a world champion. So yeah, it's a great play. And that's going to make the bingo total 3-0. And, it's really looking like Joel Wapnick's game here.
Yeah, that's a fantastic spot by Joel, just with the obvious spot. I know I say obvious, maybe to many of you, ANA is not an obvious hook, Anna. But to players at this level, that is the easier spot to play Matilda. The sort of thoroughness to even evaluate this possibility as a place to play your bingo, that is really, really impressive on Joel's part. And looks like he's drawn another pretty flexible rack here. Melodian through the O of Bouge is potentially yet another bingo ready to go down for Joel, if I'm not mistaken, Sam.
Yeah, this is a bingo fest for Joel. And speaking of finding places to play your bingos, Wellington has a 7-letter word, a valid one, on his rack, and it ends in an S. It's a plural of a 6-letter word, but there's really nowhere, I don't think there's anywhere to put it on this board. We, of course, talked about that begunk hook, but no beguns, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's anywhere, any 8-letter words he has available. So I'm sure he's looking, because at this point, you really want a bingo to get back into the game when you're down by over 100 points on the scoreboard. And Wellington's going to set it up for us Qatars or Qatars, or I'm not sure how to say this word, but yeah, it's not quite happening here. So he might have to just.
It's rough.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'd almost want to just play. I would hate to do this, but I'd almost want to. Well, I don't know what to play. At first I'm thinking, do I just spend some of my best letters and play jams just to score some points and take away a scoring spot? Do I play something like cat atop newsy to, score some points and keep a better lead? I'm not seeing great options here for Wellington. It's tough, it's tough. You kind of want to just stare at your bingo for a minute or two, but I say, oh no, why can't I play I finally drew a bingo, but
it's very natural, right? When you have that bingo on the rack, it's difficult to sort of come to terms with, those phases of grief, denial, the first phase. I'm not going to be able to get this bingo down. The faster that you can come to acceptance of the fact that you're not going to be getting a bingo. But I was just looking really quickly at this possibility of what could possibly fit here. I was looking at like door jam.
I was just going to say door jam.
Unfortunately, the B's are both on the board, so that's not possible. I'm not really sure what's in there. I know over jump is a word, and there's a couple V's and a P. So maybe is that something we see down the stretch of over jump through both triples? That would be an absolutely massive play. Wellington is nowhere close to those letters, but something like that, if Wellington gets close to having, for example, a V and a P on his rack, a play through this spot is one of the few things that after Joel's next play, which a bunch of you guys in the chat have pointed out, not only Melodian, but also modeling and emboldened. So Joel has his pick of all kinds of bingos, but a play through these two triple word scores, even as a non-bingo, would score an absolutely massive amount. It would score almost 200 points in that spot. So there is, as we can know that it's incredibly unlikely that a play will sort of arise in that spot. But if it did, that would be a possible lifeline for Wellington back into the game. So we'll just have to see what he draws and if he thinks of such a creative possibility here.
That would be amazing. That seems like one of those routes to get back in the game when you can multiply your word by 9, and especially if it's got a J and an M and a P in it, that's pretty good. Speaking of suggestions from the chat, I'm seeing some good ones about Wellington maybe setting himself up. So of course, one of the sort of strategies that we have in Scrabble is to set ourselves up for next turn. And I think you've showed some amazing videos, or you've created some amazing videos of our Scrabble GOAT, Nigel Richards, and his amazing setup plays. I think he's he's kind of the best at everything, but he's really, one of his many strengths is those really creative setups. And so one of the sort of more basic setups is with the S, you set up your S, maybe make a way you can pluralize the S. In this case, like I'm seeing a suggestion from Noah Slatkoff in the chat, well, maybe he could play cart. So cart would fit under that bouge play, making ba, or, and ut, but scart is a valid word as well. And so there is one other S unseen to him, so it's possible it could get taken up. But this would be nice because there's the only 2-letter word that goes under the C is ch, C-H. Well, you can call that a word, but the H is already gone. So Wellington would have a very nice way to set himself up. And these plays, I find them very difficult to find. You're so focused on, do I have a bingo? Do I have a big scoring play? And I don't always look for these plays. And I've had to kind of train myself, like when I have the Z, to say, gosh, is there a way I could set myself up to use this Z next turn for 60? And the S is another one of these tiles because not only does it, of course, pluralize so many words. I think I've maybe got this from your Better Know a Letter series, but of course it also is by far the most common way to hook a word onto the beginning. And it looks like he's actually, well, maybe not. I thought he was setting it up, but now he's just going with that. He's looking at that cat possibility. And Wellington has been in the tank, Will. He has now taken more than 7 minutes on this turn. He knows that it's a vital turn for him. You know,
this sets him up too. So it's not as, devastating of a setup as cart. So it does put an S hook on the board for him, and there wasn't really a good one. You're right, Sam, that he spent forever on that turn because it's a very challenging turn. He's down 100. He needs to really think deeply about what his pathway back into the game is. So this does have an S set up to recommend it a little bit. I just want to note there's no way Wellington could know this, but had he played cart right here, it would have blocked all of Joel's bingos, whether it's modeling, melodian, or embolden. His play of cart setting up his S would have happened to block everything that Joel had. There's no way Wellington could know this, and I wouldn't consider that to be a mistake on that basis at all. For all Wellington knows, Joel had just drawn 7 new tiles from the bag. You definitely do not expect that he's going to draw something so perfect out of the bag. But yeah, maybe just a little bit of, at least for us here in the booth, wishing that Wellington had made the even more creative S hook just to keep this game a little bit closer. Not that we're rooting against Joel, who has played beautifully in this game, but more rooting for that nice close game. And look at that, Sam. The K hook goes down instantly.
He was probably waiting for it. Maybe when he played Begun, he might have thought, a lot of players study the hooks, or you at least kind of look for those hook letters. And so maybe as soon as he played Begun, he was thinking, I know this word only takes a K, or I remember that there's this hook where you can turn Begun into Begunk, or maybe just in the course of the game, he thought of it. So yeah, he saw that obviously instantly. As soon as the K hit his rack, he was ready to seize on that. Well, he's got that P and that V and that R. Now he just needs that E and that O.
But wow, he's so close. He literally needs just the O and E.
It might be worse now. Well, Joel has 2 O's.
Yeah, it's a shame there's only a couple of them unseen in the bag. So Joel does have a bunch of them on his rack. Damn, he got close. He has all the rare stuff right here. And again, okay, Joel's having none of it. This makes a ton of sense from Joel's POV, Sam.
Great play. Great play. First of all, even in a close game, it probably would be the right play because he's scoring so well. He's scoring 39 points, I believe. No, 42 points. My apologies. And that's always helpful. That's a great score. But when you're winning by 120 points, you want to think about the ways in which you can lose the game. And this game is starting to go towards the end. And that's a lot of points to make up. You would need, most bingos don't score 100 points. You would need really multiple bingos, which would be very difficult to do on this board. There's no blanks left. So as unlikely as a play like Overjump was, because you need to have exactly those 6 letters, E, O, R, U, P, V, it's actually one of the more I think it's probably one of the more likely ways for Wellington to get back into the game, because it's so many points. I think it's got to be almost 200 points, like you said, Will, that it would actually catapult Wellington into the lead. So taking out that triple possibility, as unlikely as it is to have a word that goes J space M space, it's such a big scoring possibility that it's, as we can see by knocking it out, it's basically game over. He's now up by 163 points. Even if Wellington somehow had a bingo, which he's really not even close. And Wellington is going to now set up his S in a sort of a similar way to what we were suggesting, or what the chat was suggesting with Spun. At this point, it's now the last S because he played his S off with Stork and he drew the final S. So it's going to be pretty difficult for Joel to obstruct it, although Joel can use the bump hook. He can hook his F onto bum. I'm not sure if he'll want to play oaf because it kind of strings a letter into the triple, but he's just going to go for it anyway. And he's got good timing here because
Wellington can do nothing.
Yeah. Well, now he's thinking it over because, like I was just saying with the triples, this is exactly the moment. Basically, the one thing I would not want to do is give Wellington the chance for 180, 200-point play, because that's so as long as you don't do, and maybe none of them are available, you can actually look into the pool and try to figure out, is there a word that, hooks the S onto spun and goes through the O into oaf. And he might have just looked back at the unseen letters on his tracking sheet and done that. And maybe he determined, I haven't actually looked into this, whether there are any possibilities unseen to him for triples. In any case, it's obviously a moot point with Wellington's rack. He's drawn Drek. And yeah, this is obviously going to be a pretty dominating win for Joel. At this point, it's past enough time. I'm just playing VORS and moving on to the next game.
Yeah, agreed. And Wellington is going to do the same. Just saying, there's I'm going to give up here and cut my losses. Hard to argue with that in a game where his opponent bingoed 4 times in total and 3 straight turns in the mid game. Just not Wellington's game to win, but kudos to Joel for spotting a couple great bingos. In particular, Matilda with all those overlaps is a word that you could see escape notice some of the time with all those overlaps there. So just want to point out, interesting play by Wellington of pun here. He could have played he had 2 R's on his rack. He could have played PUR right here, undoubling his R's and setting up spur for himself, which would have been, a similarly good S setup to spun. But I like his choice of pun because it's so much more difficult for Joel to block it conclusively. Something like purr in this spot would have been pretty easy to block just with an overlapping play, placing a bad letter in this spot where the R of Vors is. So very clever play by Wellington. There's no way he didn't see purr, P-U-R, on his rack there, but he made that choice to create a setup where even if it leads to fewer 7-letter bingos playing, they're more likely to actually fit on the board after Joel's next play. Much more difficult for Joel to block.
Great point, Will. The game was basically out of reach, but the game was out of reach at that point, but it was a good play to give himself the chance to make up some spread points. Of course, he got unlucky. He drew 3 more consonants, so he had no vowels, but it forced Joel to play oaf. And, he could have drawn something. He could have drawn a bingo. He could have drawn something like Vizors, V-I-Z-O-R-S, and scored 60 points on the triple word. So it was the right play, I think, to, as far as I can tell, at least, to make up some spread points. And it was very difficult to block. Joel had the F to hook bum, and he still couldn't conclusively block the spot. So just a nice tactical decision. And it's those decisions accrue over the course of 31 games that give players like Wellington such massive spreads by the ends of these tournaments and, get him into the finals or, put him over the top as Joel plays 3 tiles, which is going to empty the bag. He's going to draw the final tile, which I think is an L. And Wellington has really had a tough one. Not only did his opponent get 4 bingos down, he has not even gotten 1 down, which is unusual for him, of course. As a world, a world champion does not, it's a rare game for him when that happens. So looks like he's just going to plop that Q down and hope he can get rid of, see if he can get rid of both his Q and his Z in time for the end of this game.
Yeah, I would definitely say a game where Wellington Jighere does not play a bingo is extremely rare. I would not hazard a guess how rare in terms of percentage, but it's probably in, something like less than 5% of the time, or maybe even less often than that. I would say that Wellington has a style where he's comfortable going for intermediate scores, right? He played newsy to start the game using his S as opposed to keeping a better bingo leave. I would say that Wellington is more comfortable eschewing strong bingo leaves in favor of intermediate scores. That being said, extremely rare to see him not get one down, and that is entirely due to luck of the draw to a certain extent. So he plays his cue there, Sam. I think that makes sense. It's going to give him a chance to follow up with his Z. I think that might have been his only. Well, he had another spot to play his cue here, but that was his best spot to play the cue, and now he'll at least get another opportunity to play his Z next turn. It looks like he has ZEN set up on his rack. His best place to play his Z would be right here with Zenana. Wellington's such a good endgame player. I would not be surprised to see him lay that down.
That'd be a really fun spot. And just another way that he would rack up some spread. Well, not rack up, but stem the bleeding, essentially. And I'm glad you brought it back to the first play of the game. One of my favorite things to think about is the differences in style between some of the top players. And people don't all play the game the same way, even at the highest level. So obviously, Wellington Jighere, a world Scrabble champion, among many other accolades and accomplishments in his career. Also at this tournament, there he is in the background behind Joel, Dave Wiegand, who I would rate. I could be wrong, Will. You probably have I know you have your own opinions, but I would assume. But the best Collins player never to win a world championship. So I'm excluding then NWL players. But I would be surprised. Well, I'll ask you if you have a sense of Dave Wiegand's game. If he had the same first 7 letters, would he play newsy? Or would he play something different? Because I would expect out of his style, maybe something like win, like you suggested, or maybe something just like noob, keeping that S for next turn. Well, he's right there.
There he is.
Wellington. Let's
get him on the horn. Yeah, it's a great question. I do think that he would probably play win. I totally agree with your assessment of Dave, by the way. And I would say that he really is in that conversation for best overall player in North America right now. Dave is in really strong form at the moment. I feel like he is a pretty tough out right now and is definitely one of the biggest threats to win this division of the Collins division at Word Cup. Of course, no slight to Wellington. He's just winning tournaments left and right. There are so many good players in this field that it's just hard to ascribe that much winning percentage to any one player. But yeah, I agree with you, Sam. The stylistic variation inherent to Scrabble is really one of the things that makes it so fun. I love that. I love that there's enough room for players to showcase their style. And it looks like Wellington he was considering Zenana, but now this spot that Joel just created might allow him to play Zed for more points. So we may not be about to see that cool extension play after all. I think Zed scores 30 points in this spot, so that's going to work out slightly better. But yeah, I love that. I love that stylistic nature of Scrabble. Of course, there are a lot of plays where the best play is going to be the same for pretty much any player. When you have one bingo available, or when there's one endgame sequence that wins you the game, any Grandmaster player is going to know that those are the plays you want to play. There's a lot of room in between for some cool stylistic variation.
Yeah, it's I'm hesitant to say anything. I don't know about critical, but to sort of question the plays of Wellington, who would wipe the floor with me and is a world champion. And at the same end, newsy, of course, is not a you could call it maybe a mistake, but certainly not a blunder or anything. But you could question if it is a questionable play. And in this case, it did really backfire for him because Joel's bingo scored a little more, opened the board up. Wellington didn't have his S anymore. And and Wellington struggled to bingo. So obviously that's just one game. As we have talked about, you can make the perfect play and it can backfire on you randomly as the game ends. And Wellington did make up just a little spread in the end game, but obviously a big win for Joel. And it'll be a nice, he started with a loss in his first game, so he'll be happy to not only get back on track, but get a win. And I think we're going to cut to our table, Mike, and see if the players are chatting.
These are two of our less garrulous players potentially. So we'll see if a spirited discussion. Also, the game was kind of a blowout. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think I'm talking a lot about this new. We're talking about this newsy play and these decisions, but these are not. Some games there's lots to talk about. And some games.
This one I should have not done that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think maybe you had that or something else besides it. I mean, it's just a horrible play. Oh, well.
The most important thing is to win.
Yeah, true.
I prefer to play bad and win.
Exactly. Winner went first. Okay. You have to, yeah. You want to confirm it?
It's fine.
Players confirming the scores here.
Thank you.
Submitting their results using the
game played itself in my shot, except this was a nice play, but everything else was
very
kind of.
play.
Thank you. Everything else was pretty straightforward.
You must have been very related to see it because it was unblockable. Anna also.
Yeah, I had Matilda there as well. Yeah. I saw both of them. I saw this one first, actually, and then I said, wait a second.
Good patience. Once you find a good move,
that's
better.
No, I don't want to do that.
All right. So the players are going to square up their tiles. Maybe we'll cut back to the booth. And I see this question a lot, Sam. Why are the players doing that? And I'm not sure what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a good.
I thought they were about to. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Wellington, I guess, is taking a picture, it looks like.
Yeah, sorry. Premature on my part to cut back to us. But in any case, they will be squaring up the board in a moment. And that is merely a courtesy to the next players at this board, just to make sure at a very quick glance, are all 100 tiles accounted for. So that is why the players always square up their tiles. As the next players to this board, it's very nice to be able to just look and see, yes, we're playing with a full set of 100 tiles. And I might add, our next players to the top board are going to be, again, with matchups like this early, maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but it's going to be another matchup of champions, Jesse Day versus Josh Sokol, coming to the top board for us to dive into. Two of the more creative players that I've ever had the opportunity to watch, Sam. I'm pretty excited for that matchup as well.
I'm thrilled. This is a great matchup. I mean, no slight to anyone in the field. I think it'd be fun to watch anyone. But of course, when you get to observe and commentate on some of the best players, and especially ones who have these creative and really unique in some ways styles, I think it's a lot of fun. I've played a lot of games with Jesse over the years. Always enjoyed playing against him. He's a great competitor. I don't think I've ever played against Josh, but of course I've seen his content online and his videos, and he was last year's champion, the U.S. champion in the NWL Scrabble Players Championship. So yeah, some great play. That's a really exciting matchup. And yet again, we're seeing the high quality in this field. So really every round. And Josh also a recent basically I think a convert at this point to the Collins lexicon. He started, as many of us do, with the North American NWL lexicon. And then he won last year the U.S. Nationals, the Scrabble Players Championship, one of the two major North American tournaments. And then after that, he has switched. So I guess it's been about a year, and he's been primarily, if not exclusively, playing Collins. Of course, you know more about that. And he does still play the NWL or the WoW or the North American Lexicon. But so I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. You're right about that he has focused more on the international lexicon. That's sort of that's something that I myself did after winning. In either case, not everybody makes that leap right away, but it depends on, do you aspire to travel overseas to play Scrabble? Do you aspire to play amazing players like Wellington Jighere, or players from other areas in the world, the best players from the UK, Australia, David Eldar, Nigel Richards? If you aspire to play those players, it can be appealing to switch over, but not everybody has those desires and ambitions. So for now, we've got our two lexicons, and this afternoon we will be bringing some play from the more North American focused lexicon.